Hello and welcome to my channel. Here I review new movies and television shows and discuss them. Today I want to talk about Netflix's new Luther: The Fallen Son. It's a crime drama follow-up to the series that ended in 2019 and follows Luther breaking out of prison to take on a serial killer that's terrorizing London. It was directed by Jamie Payne and written by Neil Cross, and sees Idris Elba return as John Luther. The film also features Andy Serkis as the serial killer and Cynthia Erivo as DCI Odette Rain. To start off, I just want to let you know that I have not watched all of the series, but the case the movie is about is new. The film only sees a couple of returning characters, and it works well enough as a standalone product. It begins by setting up a case in John Luther's past. He's a DCI in London, and a young man goes missing in the middle of the night. Luther promises the man's mother that he'll find him, and then the film changes perspectives to Andy Serkis' character. He is the psychopath responsible for kidnapping the man, and upon hearing that Luther is on the case, he sets him up to go to prison. The movie then skips a few years ahead to Luther in prison. His reputation is destroyed, and he is alone. With Luther finally out of the way, the antagonist puts his master plan into motion. We're introduced to the new DCI head, Odette Rain, and Dermot Crowley makes an appearance as the former DCI head, Martin Schenk, as the serial killer starts ramping up the number of kidnappings. We watch as Luther orchestrates a prison break, investigates the case, and tracks him down with the help of Rain and Schenk. The story is filled with plot holes and coincidences. You basically have to turn your brain off or you won't make it more than 5 minutes into the film. The story is highly interesting and a lot of crazy events take place that are entertaining to watch, but absolutely none of it is well explained or makes all that much sense. They never talk about the killer's actual motivations, they only vaguely hint at his past, and we never learn anything about him beyond how evil he is. Luther is constantly ignoring damage to his body like it's nothing. Characters act in totally irrational ways, and the writers of this film have clearly never seen any kind of flammable liquid actually lit on fire. I know it's silly to get hung up on this, but there's a scene where they literally spray kerosene from the sprinkler system for several minutes and light it, and the room barely ignites. It would have literally exploded from the vapors in the air. Luther and the other two returning characters are both one-note versions of themselves. The movie doesn't really explain who they are, or get into the details of their personalities. The new characters are all over the place, and don't really make any sense. Their motivations are never explained, and they act however the story needs them to act, and they're barely fleshed out. The case never really takes center stage, and the film does very little to flesh out the details of it. We see Luther ask one or two people some questions, and he traces a phone number, but tracking down the killer never involves any serious police work. By the end, we have a general idea of what the killer's plan was, but no idea what he was actually using to blackmail any of his victims, or how he was obtaining all of the information to do so. His secret organization never really gets talked about, and his two accomplices have 1 or 2 lines each, barely get acknowledged, and don't do anything competent. Despite how much passion Andy Serkis is putting into the role, the story becomes unbelievable when it's revealed that the killer is not only a coward, but also wildly incompetent, despite running an organized crime syndicate for upwards of 10 years, and coming up with a highly complex long-term plan that he executes almost flawlessly. Why would a coward do everything himself if he has all these employees around? The characterization is just really bad and doesn't explain him at all. The cast is surprisingly good despite the lack of range the story provides them. Idris Elba returns as John Luther, and he plays it well. He's remorseful for his previous actions and does a lot of sullen looks. He also gets a few small monologues here and there that he delivers in a captivating way. Andy Serkis plays the villain of the story. He's Joker-like in nature, always wearing this fake smile that barely contains the hatred behind his eyes. He takes extreme pleasure in hurting others and messing with their minds, and Serkis gets it all across in a terrifying manner. When it's revealed that he's a bit of a coward, the character becomes a bit absurd, but Serkis still plays it well. Cynthia Erivo doesn't get to do much other than curse Luther and act upset and scared for her daughter later in the film. She does well with the emotions, but never got a chance to shine. Production-wise, the film is wrapped in a soft and expensive-looking wrapping paper and even has a few oddly placed bows in the box. It's smooth and looks good, and there's a number of cool scenes that stand out. The camera work and angles are fairly simple but aesthetically pleasing. The sets are well designed, colorful, and vibrant, and each of the characters has a somewhat unique look that makes them really stand out. It gets the story across clearly and is fairly exciting. There's a few over-the-top kidnapping sequences that really play up the horror elements, a scene or two of Luther fighting, and a prison break. There's also a number of fancy shots in the film that don't make any sense, but look really nice. Like that shot of Luther standing on a rooftop looking over the city. It's a nice cityscape and Elba looks great in the sunlight, but how did he get there? Why is he there? And what is he hoping to see from up there without binoculars or anything to zoom in? The soundtrack is excellently put together and masterfully manipulates every scene's emotions. It comes in at the perfect time, does its job in an efficient and seamless manner, and then retreats without you even noticing. It's entirely made up of orchestral instrumentals, but they're scored for the individual scenes and work well at amplifying the moment. The one scene that stands out is when all the parents arrived at the mansion and found their kids. The rising music that culminates in the place burning to the ground was intense. Overall, I found Luther, the Fallen Son, to be a fun but mindless crime drama. The case is another bad guy can get to anyone's story, and Luther's investigation isn't particularly interesting. The action sequences are good, the visuals are nice to look at, the soundtrack works wonderfully, and the cast is putting on great performances. I just didn't like the writing. I also don't think the film went out of its way to try anything new or experimental. It was entertaining as a whole, but it's mostly made up of rehashed tropes. It's good for an afternoon watch, but don't expect anything too deep. 8 out of 10. Remember guys, these are just my thoughts. If you don't agree, eviscerate me in the comments down below.
See you later, alligator.